Now that Zack and I have returned from our separate summer road trips, we need to catch up on all the big news from the Realm Makers Conference. This 10th annual gathering from July 21st through 23rd brought together fantastical creators and publishing pros at an Atlantic City hotel. Lorehaven was also there, sharing with new and existing fans how we explore fantastical stories for God's glory. We also got to see the winners of the 2022 Realm Awards for Best Christian-Made Fantasy in books, audio, short stories, and beyond. Welcome back to Fantastical Truth, a podcast from Lorehaven.com in which we explore fantastical stories for God's glory and apply their meanings to the real world Jesus calls us to serve. I'm E. Stephen Burnett. I'm Lorehaven's publisher. I'm a speaker and co-author of the nonfiction book about fiction, The Pop Culture Parent.
And while many fans like Stephen wait for the Zack Snyderverse to be restored, we have restored the Stephen and Zack verse. That's right, I'm back. This is episode 123. Which fantastical novels won big at the 2022 Realm Awards?
Zack, you were not able to go to Realm Makers this time, and I regret that choice, but also understand because you also have many other hats to wear. You took your family on a big road trip, got to see the Ark Encounter, went up to a big conference of your own. I'm curious, just before we get started here, what happened on your road trip?
Yeah, so we logged at least 4,000 miles in a great big circle. We drove around the United States. May need some new tires or oil or something after this, but thank goodness all the driving went just fine. You might hear in my voice, we did pick up COVID along the way back, so I'm still fighting through that right now with all the weapons I can fight it with. But yeah, we had a niece's wedding, then we had a big conference for the ministry we work for, and then we got to see the Creation Museum and Ark Encounter. And my goodness, that was so delightful to go to both of those things. Man, Stephen, the most surprising thing to me was to hear languages from around the world and see people from around the world there at the Ark Encounter. I mean, we saw people very obviously Hindu and Muslim, as well as just normal people from other parts of the world. I could not believe how international it was and how what would draw you there if you were not a Christian. You know, this event was very not only internationally focused, but very evangelistic focused. So that was quite something. And I think my favorite part of it, which is very on brand for our show, is they had this one exhibit that was the 200 or so ancient myths that all pointed to a worldwide flood. And so you could read these myths in these like cool little tablet kind of things. And it's like, wow, the Noah's flood is not just story recorded in the Bible. It was recorded by many ancient peoples shortly after the Tower of Babel, is what it seems like.
We were talking before the show about Christians who seem to have woken up recently and decided that we need some more inclusivity in our fiction. And that, however, is something I've already seen like for decades from Answers in Genesis, Ark Encounter,
Yes.
Creation Museum. Like they were doing it arguably before it was cool. Like they literally in the mid-90s were putting out material, against racism and that kind of thing. So to me, it makes perfect sense then that it would have international appeal, that they would attract a naturally occurring ethnic diversity and even religious diversity to those attractions, because it's not just Christianity or even Judaism that owns the story of Noah's Ark. You can go there, as I've said in our podcast about that, regardless of whether you believe the Ark is true. Although I do believe it was true, I accept the global flood. I accept this as history. But, I don't believe in Hogwarts. I don't believe Hogwarts is real. And yet lots of people go to the wizarding world of Harry Potter just because they're in that fandom. Lots of people grew up hearing about the fantastical story of Noah and his Ark as a kid, whether or not they'd accept it as history. It's great to go there and see some of the fantastical yet biblically based speculation about how this could have happened. And I'm glad you guys were able to go not only there, but to the Creation Museum, which I can't pick a favorite between the two attractions. You guys got the double evangelical pilgrimage done there. I think you get your evangelical cards, another couple of punches there for all of your members of your family.
Yeah, and the whole time walking around, we walked about 4 miles that whole day. That Ark is gigantic, 500 feet front to back and 4 different levels.
Spec. Yep.
Yeah, amazing
wood
kind
structure.
Of stuff.
Yeah.
Yep. I thought, wow, we could have been walking around at Disney World or something, or Six Flags, but here we are at a Christian theme park. Like, this is it's blowing my mind. There was just nothing like this when I grew up. And even until a few years ago, there was nothing like this. And so it was very surreal being there. But, The Ark encounter, it was so chock full of not only kind of creative interpretations of this is how we think they could have stored the animals, fed them, took care of them, and how they, their living quarters and everything, but this is how we think like you mentioned, diversity. This is how we think all the different peoples of the world came from this one family, this patriarch and a matriarch and their three sons and their wives. And this is how you can get all of the human biodiversity we see today from these 8 people. That was really something. And again, they made the point, like you said, that there is one race, there's the human race, but we see all this diversity within that one race. And God loves all these different people. And sure enough, there they were walking around us. And, and then you go sit down and you listen to these like short films, or they're kind of funny, but they very clearly present the gospel. And I thought, well, praise God. People from very different religious backgrounds are hearing the gospel clearly. And I think that's a very underappreciated aspect of this attraction. Yes, it's about the ark. Yes, it's about the flood, but it's very much about escaping the future flood of God's judgment through the ultimate arc of Jesus Christ. And to kind of use their language there a little bit, just an extremely well done exhibit, though, in every respect. That we, at one point though, we were just like, my 12-year-old and I were like, okay, I think we have information overload, because you can just read and learn so much from it. But yeah, I think everyone should go there at some point in their lives.
Faithful listeners, you don't know this, and maybe Zach's about to learn this, but he just accidentally set up the topic for our next show about fantastical storytelling that also performs an evangelistic role. We won't get into that now. You can listen to the end of the show and find out what we're planning for our next topic. But rest assured, unless Zach gets double COVID like the president, we will both be in the studio for this show. But let's get started for this show, because although Zach and his great family got to go to Ark Encounter and Creation Museum, my wife and I and a bunch of other Lorehaven staff creators did get to go to Realmmakers. And as part of that, we participated in a launch party on Thursday night for the Wonderland Trials by Sarah Ella, which is also our top sponsor for this episode, from Enclave Publishing once again. This novel just released a few weeks ago in July of 2022 from Enclave Publishing, and its back cover goes something like this: solve the clues, face your fears, survive the trials. All Alice Liddell wants is to escape her normal life in Oxford and find the parents who abandoned her 10 years ago. But she gets more than she bargained for when her older sister Charlotte is arrested for having the infamous Wonder Gene, the key to unlocking the curious Wonderland reality. Soon Alice receives a rather cryptic invitation to play for Team Heart in this year's annual and often deadly Wonderland Trials. Now she has less than 24 hours to find her way into Wonderland, where nothing is impossible or what it seems. The stakes are raised when she discovers players go missing during the trials each year. Will she and her team solve the clues and find the missing players? Or will betrayal and distrust win, leaving Alice alone in a world of her own? Follow the White Rabbit into this topsy-turvy fantasy where players become prey, a sip of the wrong tea might as well be poison, and a queen's ways do not always lead one where they ought to go. This is book 1 of the Curious Realities series. I heard it's going to continue with a book 2. The hardcover is out now from Enclave Publishing. It's also available in audiobook form from Oasis Audio. Unrelated, but we at Lorehaven got an advance copy of the Wonderland Trials, and we reviewed it, and we said in part, although indebted to a classic, the Wonderland Trials is inventive and colorful in its own right, abundantly able to charm and to intrigue. That's from our advanced review. You can find that link and all the other links in our show notes for this episode 123, or you can go to lorehaven.com/podcast sponsors. Zach, I mentioned that Oasis Family Media had a launch party for the Wonderland Trials. That was a lot of fun. You basically pack a lot of people into a hotel ballroom, and Sarah Ella was there and her friends, and a bunch of clues were scattered around the room. So it was like kind of a treasure hunt, escape room type thing. Of course, hijinks ensued when people would find the clues out of order. And then I think at the end, the whole team had to go up front and yell out a catchphrase in order to win the prize. The catchphrase, of course, being, "We are all mad here." I think it's okay to spoil it now. The game has been played out. Everybody's gone home, and presumably it won't be played again. But that was a lot of fun. There were cookies and everything was very themed. You get something like Alice in Wonderland, and then you're able to wreak a little havoc with the imagination, but everything just on brand. And, my little branding soul was very happy with that. And that was a lot of fun. I guess we need a quick stop by the concession stand. Speaking of concessions, this is not an Alice in Wonderland concession, but Zack mentioned that he did pick up some COVID. It was all his fault going on the road like that. How many times does this make for you now, brother? But
the point being, third time this year.
The third time. Okay, so the trilogy is now complete. Now you can move on to some other diseases. Yeah. You need to get a little more creative there. Don't stay in that same world for too long. I get the concession there is that, folks, I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to do most of the talking here, not just because Zack is still recovering from the COVIDs, but because I was the one who went to Realmmakers, and legitimately, we talked on the way back from our respective trips, but there were some things about the conference we avoided, specifically so we could hear it from me here for the very first time. So let's go to chapter 1 of this discussion. What is the world map of the 2022 Realmmakers Conference? We're just going to sketch it from above here, mixing metaphors, kind of a 1,000-foot view about the conference. And you can go to our show notes and get the media release from lorehaven.com. If you hadn't heard of Realmmakers before, you just get to find out in that media release. What is it? Okay, it's a conference for Christian-made and often faith-based writers of fantasy and science fiction and stuff. Lorehaven is not about writers and all that, mainly because other groups do that so well. Lorehaven wants to focus on the fans. Realmmakers focuses on the creators of these stories, but they're also fans. So there's a lot of audience overlap, and we know there's a lot of Realmies among our audience here too. But we have our different focuses there, but are certainly partners in trying to raise awareness and the quality of these kinds of stories. You can get more information, like I said, in that link. This year's conference was in Atlantic City, which I guess is the setting I want to picture for everybody. Usually, Realmmakers is at a hotel called the Sheraton Westport in St. Charles, which is a suburb of St. Louis, Missouri. And in fact, we're going back there next year, which is nice because that's like a 12-hour drive for my wife and I, and probably for you guys as well. Yeah. So maybe we can actually end up in the same sweaty minivan or something this next year or so. But this time, it was in a very different sort of venue. It was at the one of the many bays of the Atlantic in New Jersey, and it was called, what was it called? Harrah's Resort Casino, something or other. So basically, picture, it's a casino hotel, perched at the end of a bay in the ocean. And I will tell you, Zack, and a lot of people complain sometimes too much about this. That meant that there was a lot of walking. At least for us, you had to take the elevator, down, and then you had to walk through kind of the shopping mall type environment, and then you had to go into the conference center. Like, it was rather massive. And on the ground floor of the conference center was not Realmmakers. There was a huge dance competition. So there's people walking around in leotards and their parents, and, and you can see all the cliques, and you could see all the people huddled around in a circle. And then once you go up the massive escalators through this cavernous space to the second floor of the conference center, you are greeted with a sign that says, "Please, no dance practice on this floor." And I saw a few Instagram videos where Realmies were, of course, doing a little improv movement there right next to the sign, just to be naughty. I don't think it was about us, though. I think it was about the folks downstairs who, I believe, honored the sign. But man, that dance thing went on for longer than I think Realmmakers. I think they were there when we left, and they were there when we arrived. So they were really.
So what exactly was it? A dance contest or something?
Some kind of, it was like a competition. I mean, they had it done up as if it was a reality show, like it was various teams. Obviously, juvenile folks coming in from around the country, and then all their parents. So several styles seem to be represented. I don't mind telling you, kind of look in the room and then back out very quickly because it's looking like that Netflix movie that we canceled Netflix for in there. And like, I'm not into that sort of thing. Thanks. Okay. But the rest was, just ballet and modern. And, my wife, Lacey, spent a lot of time doing dance teaching at a private school, very Christian oriented. So she is my dance whisperer. She can tell me what's going on about that stuff. But upstairs, you had all the creative stuff going on. You had Realmmakers. So, kind of different spheres there. Out in the hotel, you've got people sitting around like zombies gambling, and then you go a little further.
Casino stuff. Yeah.
It's a casino hotel. Yeah, we didn't always pass the casino, but it was there, and folks sit there like they've been assimilated by the Borg, just kind of plugged into the machines, and it's kind of sad. So enough said about that. Then we move into the the dance contest, or things are a little bit more wholesome, and then you go to Realmmakers, and it's like wholesomeness grand central because almost all folks there are Christians of some variety or other. The conference is going on for about 2.5 days total, not including the pre-conference or post-conference events. and a lot of familiar faces, a lot of folks that I'd hope to see there who were not, including you, Zach, but hopefully you'll make it next year. And personally, I didn't go to any of the writers' classes or anything like that. I was just there representing Lorehaven. My wife and I had some things we had to take care of Thursday morning, but the McCarrys, Laura McCarry, who does our marketing, and her husband were there to help set up the table. And it was rather cavernous space too for the marketplace, which is one of my favorite features of Realm Makers. Even though it has the bookstore, and we had to walk out of there with a giant stack of books. Even though with Elijah David, my wife and I had stayed on the way up around in Georgia, and we went to a bookstore where we also got a large stack of books. So I don't know how we're going to read all this stuff. It's just a job hazard.
Oh, that's not the point. The point is to collect the books and to put them on a shelf, and it looks nice.
Yes, but that's immoral.
It's a different hobby than reading.
But my soul tells me this is immoral to buy a book and then not read it. It's just rude. It's like walking away.
You just
from
got to smother that shoulder angel a little bit.
I suppose so. Yeah, just put him in a jar and then follow all the memes. Like, yes, add to what was it? There's a meme with Kermit and the evil Kermit. It's like I can't afford any new books. Yes, add to your collection. And it's like, yeah.
The shoulder angel or Kronk shoulder angel. I'll show you the way that rocks.
Yes, the spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak in my case. But hey, we got good books, and I honestly, some of the books I got were physical copies of books that I'd already read, because it's a perk with Lorehaven. We're not rolling in the greenbacks over here, but it is a perk that we do get books sent to us digitally in order to get them to the best person to review them. And sometimes I read and review the book personally, and if I really enjoy it, I want to go out and get a physical copy and then get it signed by one of the authors. And of course, after the Realm Awards banquet on Friday night, on Saturday, I was going out and getting more of those books and having them signed. But we'll talk a bit in the Realm Awards later. I just wanted to give you that larger view of the conference, especially for those who couldn't go or not familiar with Realm Makers.
Now, this was the 10th annual conference.
Yes, indeed.
Does that include the 2020, virtual conference?
It's surprising how often that came up, because some people would have gone to this conference in person. This is their first physical conference, even though they went to the 2020 virtual conference.
Okay.
And then yet they would have a little 1 on their name badges to indicate that this was their first conference.
First in person, yeah.
Well, I think that people, if you'd already been to a previous physical event before 2020, or if you'd been in 2021 and then came in 22, you got to put a little 3 sticker on there. You've gone to 3 conferences, but I think they were telling them, hey, if this is your first physical conference, then put a 1 on there. And then that means next year they'll put a 3 on there if they make it to all 3.
But did Realm Makers start in 2012 or
2013? Yeah.
Oh, 2013. Oh,
I
okay.
was there, Gandalf. I was there 2,000 years ago. And I probably mishandled that quote.
So the first one. Yeah.
The 10th one. Yeah. The first conference was at a University of Missouri campus in St. Louis, and very small event, only 1 track of classes. And you had to hole up in the dorm because it was the off season. And I think early August, and then you had to hike all the way across campus or take the shuttle if it showed up, and go to your courses. And it's probably less than 100 people there, probably less than 70 people there if I remember right. But the costume banquet was great.
And how did this year's turnout compare to last year?
Oh, that's a great idea. Let's see here. Actually, I pulled that up in my press release here. Give me 1 second. Yeah, Lorehaven is doing the helping out with the media releases for this. I got the exact numbers in the media release.
Yeah, this just said over 350 for this year, but I don't know what it was last year.
Yeah, I think that's if you combine the live attendance as well as the virtual attendance. Let's see. Yeah, over 350 creators. That's correct. And then that was in person, and then over 60 virtual attendees. So getting close to 420 total attenders there. Because it's the same conference, but if you're attending virtually, then obviously you're not hanging out with people as much unless you've set up a Zoom call or something with somebody. But you can watch all the classes live stream. I think they had like 1 internet glitch the first day, but then got that ironed out, and then all the recordings are made available later for folks who signed up. You can get the recordings, presumably. Reach out to Realm Makers about that. But 2013 was the first event, and then it's definitely I'd say it's quadrupled or gone to 5 to 6 times that original attendance, and then held fairly steady there for the past few years.
That's wonderful. Well, I certainly missed it. It was just exactly the same time of the week as a conference I had to go to for work, which a lot of really exciting things happened there, which maybe we'll talk about this some other time. I did notice a trend though on Facebook. I'm friends with a lot of Realme authors, and I noticed a lot of them said, I can't make it this year, and I'm missing this person, and that person say, yeah, I'm not there either. I'm really missing that person, and there were like a lot of posts like that, and so I wonder if it's just had to take a year off, or it's just all the way on the East Coast, and a lot of these people are in the South or in the West Coast, and so. But that's good to see that overall there was a high attendance. Where I assume there was a lot of new people there. Like, did they do like a show of hands for, like you said, there's people with the number one on their badge for first time in person. Did you get any sense of like what percentage of attendees were first timers?
First timers did put their hands up at one point. Obviously, very difficult to count, at least when you're in the middle of the room, but it's definitely in the dozens, maybe even in the high dozens for that
That's
conference. And that matches my experience at previous events as well. I mean, folks will rotate in and out because a lot of folks who go to an event like this are doing this on the side, creativity, creative writing, that kind of thing. Or the finances aren't there this year, or maybe you're choosing to go to the online option. Which is also great. You obviously can sleep in your own bed that night, and you can make your own free continental breakfast. I've done it myself. We all did in 2020, and that was a really great experience. But there's nothing like being there in person. I just have to say, and a lot of people commented on that.
Okay, so a little off topic, but
go for it,
and not exactly about the conference, but we've both gone on road trips. So I want to hear what your road trip listening choice was, like your soundtrack or your audio stories. Like, what did you guys fill the time with? Audio wise?
Oh, I can do a pitch here actually, because we weren't listening to the audiobook for Fantastes, the book quest that we just finished in the Lorehaven Guild, which you can access by going to lorehaven.com/subscribe, and you get a free access code to portal into the guild. We didn't listen to the audiobook for that, but we took turns reading. Actually, I think my wife did most of the reading of George MacDonald's Fantastes.
Oh,
so
cool.
we
just
did read
it out loud. Neat.
Just read it out loud. Yeah. Well, she, passenger reads. Obviously, I don't read it if I'm driving, but we took turns driving as well. Yeah, I read one chapter once because we didn't go straight to Realm Makers. We made a few stops. We saw Eli, and who's a Lorehaven writer, and his family. We got to stay with them at least one night, and then just stopped by a couple of vacation spots, and then like literally the town where I remembered growing up first, even though I wasn't born there, in southwestern Virginia. Literally, my house at the time, growing up, was basically at the borders of Fangorn Forest, because those trees are just going nuts there in the Appalachians, or Blue Ridge Mountains, I guess. So then we meandered our way to Realm Makers, and we listened to, I don't think we listened to any podcasts. We listened to my wife's playlists. Well, when we were in the Blue Ridge Mountains, the playlist favored a lot of Rich Mullins, actually, because he's
to fit.
Appalachian guy. Yeah, exactly. It fit with the mountains we were seeing and some of the imagery in the songs. I mean, talk about fantastical creativity. He definitely had that. Very much gifted.
Our audio story of choice was actually Mike Naraki's Dead Sea Squirrels.
Series, yes, awesome. Okay.
Which you gave a couple of those to our youngest daughter, and then we bought some more with they had their birthdays. Our little kids had their birthdays, so we got birthday gift cards, and we've got 7 or 8 of them now. I think there's 10 total, but I don't think the last 2 are in audio yet. Which, Mike Naraki, if you're listening, we want to hear number 9 and 10 in audio. But man, those were so fun, Stephen. It was Mike doing all the voices. There was a lot of funny sound effects. There was a little bit of music. It was so delightful. It was really, really fun. Our whole family enjoyed each one. And then because we had the CDs, I was able to then transfer like the MP3s from there onto our kids' like iPods, and then they could just listen to them again. Our youngest daughter would hear it, but it's kind of hard to make out some things, when you're on on a road trip. So then she'd put on her headphones and listen to it again, and like really start to understand it. Man, those are great for a road trip. Of course, we did the obligatory Adventures in Odyssey through the new Adventures in Odyssey Club app, which
they updated. Yes, that's
right.
They
updated, and there's been kind of some rough things with that, but it was funny. At one point, they said they introduced an episode with this is Adventures in Odyssey, your official road trip soundtrack. We're like,
yes,
that's exactly
agreed.
It is
that's
the official.
How you know your audience. Yes.
Yep. So that was great too.
I did listen to a couple of Odyssey episodes on the way back. Like I'm touching up against 40 here, and yet I still sat in the passenger seat and then just lay back on my pillow. Well, my wife was driving. I just want to specify that again. And then they had a couple of new episodes out, and they're going places with the conspiracy and things like that. You know, they're doing a little of the good kind of fan service where they're like, "Hey, remember that villain that we last heard about, back in the 2000s? Well, he's back," and
Oh,
that kind of
wow.
thing. Yeah,
Very
no
nice.
spoilers there. No spoilers. I kept that pretty spoiler free. Yeah, I did get in some Odyssey time, I must say. And they have a new one out too. All right, so we're just handing out for free plugs right and left of stuff that we enjoy, which makes perfect sense. But we got another plug coming up here, after which I will cue Chapter 2. Our second sponsor for this episode is P.S. Patton's novel, The Withering, which is now out. And in fact, I got to meet him at the conference. Really great guy. Great to meet with there, P.S., whose actual name is Patrick. I hope he doesn't mind if I say that. I'll describe a little bit more on that in a moment, but first let's get to the sponsor proper here. This is a science fiction novel just launched on July the 26th. Here's the back cover. Their world has reached its end. The fight for their future has only just begun. The moon will soon collide with the surface of Nolaro, and 3 orphaned teens have nothing left in the world but each other. As the apocalypse threatens to end all life on their world, Bro is desperate to protect his little brother and secure a future for themselves, while Jima falls captive to her dark past. A sardonic traveling magician offers them a way off their dying world, but at what cost? Their search for an escape will force them to face questions of flesh versus spirit, natural life versus eternal life, and physical death versus spiritual death. Family, faith, and courage are at the heart of this end-of-the-world adventure. As I said, The Withering arrived on July the 26th, and it's already got a couple of endorsements. And one of those comes from our previous guest, Emily Hayes, who's the author of the 2020 Realm Award winner for Best Book, Seventh City, as well as the Knights of Tin and Lead series. And she said, quote, Patton has crafted a redemptive tale of brotherhood, sacrifice, and hope, end quote. There's another endorsement from Kate Stein, author of the Earthbound series, who said, I really felt those Paralandra vibes throughout, and the mix of tension with superbly done supernatural elements made me feel like I was reading a peer of Peretti or Decker. Well, that sounds pretty good. So you can find more about The Withering from P.S. Patton in our show notes for this episode 123. That link will also take you to our main page for podcast sponsors, lorehaven.com/podcast sponsors. Zach, I'm going to turn the page now and go to Chapter 2 of this in-progress episode. Whom did we meet at the Lorehaven booth in the Realm Makers Marketplace? And Patrick Patton was one of those folks. He had his own booth there to showcase a promo for his book, which had just come out, like I think just a few days after the conference started, actually. But he was trying to have some copies there. I don't think he had the copies, but he had plenty of chances to talk to folks about that. And I got to know him a little bit too, because we sci-fi writers got to stick together. Fantasy is definitely represented more at the Realm Makers Conference because, hey, folks, that's just where the market is, at least in that particular area. I also met another previous sponsor of the podcast, Andrew Chamberlain, who I think he mentioned that it was in part due to the sponsorship on the show had come all the way from merry old England. It was his first conference, whether virtual or otherwise. And he also writes science fiction. We've heard about that on previous episodes of the show too. So I just want to give a shout out to both of them. Somehow I feel like I was talking to them at once in my head, but these were separate conversations at or around our Lorehaven booth. And Zach, you would have appreciated this too, because increasingly people come up to the Lorehaven booth and they're aware of Lorehaven mainly because of this podcast. I mean, you know that Lorehaven predates the podcast. Lorehaven.com does reviews and articles and news about Christian-made fantasy to explore it for Christ's glory. But increasingly, I'd say that the podcast has basically taken the place of maybe what our old print issue of the magazine was meant to do. All of our print stuff is now online, and you can get to that for free. But we definitely urge you to subscribe, not just to the podcast, but to discover the larger Lorehaven star system at lorehaven.com.
Yep, and I've been able to catch us up on our YouTube channel. So if you just search for Lorehaven on YouTube, you can see all of our episodes now. That's an easier way for you to listen, especially if you have like a smart TV and you want to listen in the living room. That's a really easy way to listen to the podcast. So our thanks to all of you who listen and subscribe and share it with your friends. It's great to know that the message of Lorehaven is getting out through audio.
We also got to meet several of our current sponsors from Oasis Family Media. They're now the parent company of Oasis Audio. I think I got that right, as well as Enclave Publishing, which they acquired earlier this year. They're also starting a new imprint, which I was very interested to hear about, and perhaps we'll get to that in future sponsorships of this podcast. Several of their staff were appreciative of what Lorehaven does, and just as much as we appreciate them, was slightly disappointed that Steve Smith, the president of Oasis, wasn't there. But it turns out, Zach, that he had also gone to another conference, not yours. He'd gone to the big one that weekend, San Diego Comic Con.
Oh, very cool.
I think he was hoping to see Henry Cavill announced as Superman, but that didn't happen, to my everlasting bitterness. I joke. I don't think that's why he was there. He was there because he was up for an Eisner Award, a very distinguished award. It actually is. He apparently had been doing some graphic novel type work as well, and he got it. He got the Eisner Award. Yeah. Wow. So hoping to hear more about that later. Didn't get the exact nature of that project, but I would love to hear more about that.
So the Snyderverse still needs to be restored.
The Snyder is not. It is not for you to know the times and dates for the Snyderverse's restoration to the kingdom. No, apparently not. It is already and not yet. There's definitely been some hints about that, but this is not another Snyderverse show. Don't groan. Stop groaning out there, everybody. Stop groaning. I'm not going to go on about that. I'm talking about Lorehaven now. We did have a moment, though. There was a moment on Saturday when they thought that Henry Cavill was going to show up and like kind of crash the party, and otherwise DC looked really, really lame. They just had 2 movie trailers and called it a day. And then Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson couldn't really save himself from the boos of some fans when he seemed to call into question who Superman was going to be played by in the future. So we had a few people at the booth, like just kind of, watching the news with me because, I struggle with the brand, right? I don't want to be Steven the Snyderverse guy, and I want to be the Lorehaven guy, the fantasy guy, but people know, if you know, and you show up at the booth and, you do a little watching in the headlines and you realize, well, nothing happened. Doggone it. Like, actually didn't feel that disappointed. I'm at a conference surrounded by friends. Like, I'm good. No idols here. No more than usual. Real quick, Zach, about the friends. I mentioned that LG McCary was there and her husband, Caleb, as well. Marion Jacobs, Lorehaven staff creator. Let's see. Jessica Boudreau. Hope I'm saying that right. She's one of our review team members. And Josiah DeGraff, who's also a Lorehaven staff creator. He was there with the author conservatory and then hopping back and forth between our booth and his with the Kara Swanson booth in between. So some heavy hitters there at kind of the back end of the marketplace there. Josiah just wrote a really good article at the site. The one person whom my wife and I saw on the trip but didn't go to the conference was Elijah David. And Lord willing, we're going to have his article up at the site in just a couple of days from release date of this episode about the horse and his boy. So really great to hang out with the creators. Everybody has a lot of camaraderie. And I mean, they're obviously there either representing other brands or also going to the writers' classes and stuff. But we had a lot of time to catch up. Oh, and of course, I didn't say this. Marion Jacobs won the costume contest, like handily, against some very tough competition. We did have, I think it was Bradley Caffey as the Mandalorian, and then Pam Halter is like
with the baby Yoda
fairy princess or something. Of course, he had a stuffed baby Yoda. Yeah. Now, if he'd had an actual baby dressed up as Yoda, he probably would have walked away with it. Yeah, because babies always win. Yes. Yeah. Well, they won last year. But it kind of beat you and your daughter. Actually, it was Wreck-It Ralph and Princess Vanellope. But notwithstanding Carrie Neitz, who was in a full 3D printed and electronified version of the Master Chief mech suit, it was Marion who walked away with all the applause. And not only that, but the judgment there is very subjective. I mean, it's sure. A conference for creators. There's some subjectivity, and basically it's okay. Who do you like? Yell, applaud, whatever. Marion got people drumming on the tables because she was the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, the whole book. That was her dress, which she had made herself. And she had kind of this wizard staff type accoutrement, which was, the lamppost. The little flickering bulb kept falling out, but nobody noticed. And it was a truly fantastic costume, just very creative, and like had some of the Narnian imagery all over it. We've got pictures posted in the Lorehaven Guild server on Discord, as well as at the Guild spinoff group on the Facebook. So you should be able to find those if you want to. And we just had a lot of friends, folks who'd won awards in the books. And we'll get to that in a moment, including a lot of the books that we reviewed at Lorehaven.
Now, something I want to ask about her outfit. It looked like her dress had the text of the book on there. Is that correct?
It was not the book itself. She could have done that,
Okay.
but I think it was just a print. It could have been lorem ipsum. For all I know, I
Right.
wasn't reading it too closely. But I mean, she didn't need to put the actual text of the book on there. I think the MC, Lauren Brandenburg, remarked that seemed to be a Realm Makers costume contest first, where people were actually, button them on the table,
Wow.
giving a nice little soundtrack there. So that was very cool because she, lots of people, including L.G. McCarey, who was, bother, what was her character name from Mass Effect? Like she wore prosthetics and everything.
Liara
It was
something.
amazing. Yes.
Yes.
Yes,
I don't
if
know
you know
that
more
fandom.
gamer dudes than I do, yeah, I'm not familiar with that fandom. Well, I'm not familiar with the bother. Is it Halo? Master Chief is from?
Yeah,
Yeah, some of these.
Halo. Yeah,
Okay,
Master Chief is Halo. Laura was Mass
then I call
Effect.
myself a geek or a
She's like
fanboy.
a
Yeah.
alien doctor scientist or something.
Yes. I think I got the gist of it. It was a truly spectacular costume. She's all in blue. She
Yep.
had hand sewn the costume. Self-taught, and then got genuine latex prosthetics, which is not easy to put on or take off, and it certainly doesn't do wonders for your hearing in a crowded room either. And then by the end, she's kept it all on her head, unlike Dr. Lazarus was portrayed by Alan Rickman in Galaxy Quest, where he goes through his adventure and then all of his stuff on his face is falling off. I cannot imagine the discomfort there, but it looks absolutely fantastic.
Now tell me about Carrie Nietzsche's Master Chief outfit. You said it was something about it was electronified. So what did he
Yeah.
have like some like effects happening on it?
Oh yeah, he had lights coming from the helmet. He had kind
Oh,
of
nice.
this cool reflective paper on his helmet, which I think he could see through. I don't know. I never put the helmet on.
Uh-huh.
It is a great costume, but certainly a bit cumbersome. Which of course meant that when he and I were trying to get back to his room, I felt like the photographer elf at the Santa display in the mall at Christmas because all of these dance students and
So
their
when you're walking through
siblings
the rest of the
and their
hotel.
parents. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. We had to take the elevator down to the first level, and the dance competition is still going. And I think all the people were danced out. They're like, "Oh, cool! It's Master Chief from the best-selling video game franchise Halo. I must have a picture. I must have it now." And Carrie, of course, like Santa at the mall, very gracious, posed for the photos each time. And I think by the end of the night, had the helmet rather grimacingly removed and redonned 6 to 7 times. That thing was not easy to get on, but we did it, and apparently we made a lot of fans' nights. So well done. But by the end, I was like, okay, we got to get Santa back to the North Pole, before ushering him in, to the secret door by the food court or something.
Yeah, well, and I was wondering about that with the Mandalorian costume. Like, was it an actual metal helmet that he had, or was it like a plexiglass or plastic or something? Because that could also get very heavy or just
Yeah,
cumbersome or
I don't think
hot.
it was the hero helmet. I think it was just fiberglass or something. But honestly, I didn't get close enough to see. I should have. There's just so many people who are entering the banquet hall. I mean, everybody dresses up except for Steve Lobby, and he just sneaks in the back way so he doesn't get caught on camera. Oh, Zach, that's what they did different this year. I'm pretty sure they haven't done this before. In order to let everybody see the costume, what they're doing when you go into the banquet hall is they actually stop you and then put a microphone in your face and say, "Who are you and what's your costume?" And so you have to give an intro and you have to explain who your costume is, which character, either from your book or from another franchise that you're representing. And I thought that was pretty cool because then they play that video back later when everybody's at dinner so that everybody gets to see everybody's costume.
Oh, that's perfect.
Yeah, that's really cool.
And I think that's online. I'm gonna have to go back and watch that.
It is online. In fact, we should put the YouTube video link in the show notes for this episode. I'll see if I can do that. That's something that I think I was uncertain whether the banquet was going to be live streamed to the entire public, not just folks who'd signed up for Realm Makers, but apparently it was. So if you missed going to the banquet, you should still be able to get to that YouTube link. And I found it, like it's a public link. So we'll include that in the show notes.
That was not even the most important part of the award ceremony, the costume contest. It's like an unofficial award, right? So there were actual awards given out for books.
Yes, indeed. Let's turn the page and go to chapter 3 of this episode. Who won the 2022 Realm Awards categories for best books? Now, there is a pile of these awards, and I had to go through every single one of them because I also did the media release for the Realm Awards announcement. We will, of course, once again, link to that in the show notes if you want to see who won for the best flash fiction or the best audio story under 2 hours or over 15 minutes or under 15 minutes. Lots of categories there, especially for audio. Including the Best Cover Design Award, novella, novelette, and audiobooks and all that stuff. We'll just focus on some of the top ones here. I mean, well, they're all top ones. You know, each one of you is special. We just don't have time to go through every single award. First, let's just spoil the ending here. Book of the Year was chosen at the very last, but I'm going to put it first. It was Of Fire and Ash by Gillian Bronte Adams. From Enclave Publishing in their Escape imprint for YA fantasy. The book of the year is chosen from the award winners in all the other genre categories. Gillian Bronte Adams had already gotten that nod. She also won the Realm Award for the epic and high fantasy category. So we should link her interview too, Zach. We didn't interview all these folks. There's a few names here I didn't recognize, but we did talk to Gillian Bronte Adams and review Of Fire and Ash, which is a YA fantasy about basically elemental horses in a Rohan type environment. And there are wars galore and side characters, and yeah, it's a pretty epic scale there. You can find all those links in the show notes.
Yep,
So
that
she
was
got book of
episode
the year.
91.
That was the one. Okay, yeah. Thanks for that instant turnaround there. So she went home with one of the little blue flame goblet thingies that are made by Leah Neitz Glass, another creation by the Neitz family there. But she also went back with the rather grand goblet shaped article, which, by the way, does not at all look like the Goblet of Fire. It's just the goblet surrounded by fire when you see the picture at our media release there. Harry, did you put your name in the Goblet of Fire? Dumbledore asked calmly. Let's see. Who else won here? I'm not familiar with Robert Aduatu. I'm not sure how you say his last name. Robert, hey, God bless you. I'm glad you won the award. I'm sorry for mangling your name, but Robert won Best Debut Novel, which I'd not heard of. Coil and Fang, Curse of Shadows. Now that's fascinating. It's independently published, so maybe we need to reach out and see what's going on with this. It sounds like kind of a more paranormal type story there, and that's one of those underdog genres, even in a somewhat niche genre called Christian fantasy. So well done there. That's great. That's great.
Yeah, it looks sort of like an urban fantasy. If I'm kind of deciphering this correctly.
I told you we'd be pantsing the show, folks.
Yeah.
We're totally. It's outlined chaos here.
So here's the description. The year is 1892. A mythical book has been stolen, and the fate of mankind rests in the hands of two exceptional women, a brilliant detective, and a deadly vampire.
Ooh, cool. Okay. Detectives and vampires are tight. Okay. Especially when it's a team up. Okay. You know, I can forego my vampire should always be evil cage stage in order to appreciate the novelty of that premise. So cool. We'll see if we can look into that. What else is here? Oh, yes. Our friend Jamie Foley does marketing for Enclave as well as does Fayette Press. She won the general fantasy category for Silver Blood. That's book 2 following up after Ember Hawk, which we have reviewed at Lorehaven. I thought we'd reviewed Silver Blood too, but I will have to check. The reviews are starting to pile up, folks. I'm starting to lose track of what we've reviewed and haven't reviewed. But I ended up getting physical copies of both Ember Hawk and Silver Blood, which Jamie, of course, graciously signed for us. And we're looking forward to reading those in the physical version, not just the digital version. I actually was very glad that she won in that category because Jamie actually lives fairly close to us, you and I, Zach. So we're kind of part of the segment of Realmies down here in Central Texas. So well done there, Jamie. Well done. And we'll link to that in the show notes so you can get the book description and any of the reviews that we've done of her series.
Now, who won for science fiction? My personal favorite category.
Daniel Schwalbauer won for Operation Grendel. Again, another Enclave title there. It's kind of a military-ish sci-fi, if I remember the cover right from the back of my head, but it's about a journalist who has to go undercover or something like that. We can link to that in the show notes too. We have a Lorehaven review of that, and recently this spring we had Daniel on the show to talk about his more recent novel released this year, Maxine Justice, Galactic Attorney. All these novels, by the way, had to have been released in 2021. So that's why Operation Grendel got the nod there for best science fiction. And
Great.
I don't think Daniel was there, but I think this is the one where Steve Lobby, his publisher and a secret agent man in this industry, went up there and he said, like I'm guessing there's just what was it he said? It'd probably be in the video. Like I'm guessing if Daniel were here, he would say, "I have no words," and then he just left. And yeah, classic. Yeah, yeah, that was good. But apparently, the words in Daniel's book were great enough to get the Science Fiction Award and the Realm Awards 2022.
Fantastic.
Here's another title I'm not as familiar with. Another underdog genre, as I mentioned, paranormal, supernatural, and horror. They grouped all those into a single category here. Whereas fantasy, by the way, Zach, you may notice, has two categories: epic and high fantasy, and general fantasy. Yeah.
Okay.
So there's more fantasy going on here. Hey, I'm not judging. I'm just observing. Just market realities here, folks. But I want to endorse any Christian-made paranormal, supernatural, or horror novels that are excellent. And Deborah Collins Smith from Ye Old Dragon Books got the nod, walking home with the award for Mina, Warrior in the Shadows. And if I had outlined for this show the way that I want to outline a great fiction novel, I would know the back cover description there. Zach, maybe you're looking it up, but the Mina there makes me think, is that Mina Harker? Maybe it's a tribute, or maybe it's set in the Dracula universe. Now that would be interesting.
Yes, there is Dracula. It says Mina Harker allowed Dracula to change her, believing that he held answers to life's questions, but God brought her back from the edge of the abyss through the love of her husband and her friends. Now she's not quite a vampire, but she's definitely something more than a human, and she must face what she has allowed herself to become.
Dude, I just got chills. I didn't know that was the premise. you were this is a live on recording demonstration of a fantastic novel pitch. Like y'all, if you've listened to Fantastical Truth since fall of 2020, I've been in a kind of a Dracula cage stage, or like, where is this book? I just discovered this book a few years ago. This is so cool. And now thousands of new fans are also undergoing this particular transformation because there's the Dracula Daily been going on, where someone has been releasing excerpts from the actual book, which is in the public domain, by the day, because the book itself is kind of found footage. So you find some interesting overlap as to what, Jonathan is writing in his journal because he's got nothing else to do while he's being stalked by Dracula in the castle. While at the same time, Lucy's writing about all of her male suitors, on the same day. And you get a lot of interesting contrast there. And a lot of people are discovering, this 110, 120-year-old book for the first time and realizing that it's a lot better than they expected. And I'm just looking forward to when they find out, just exactly where the real action begins in London. But anyway, this premise sounds really cool. And I'm really glad that got the Realm Award for Best Paranormal, Supernatural, and Horror Story.
It's a good comparison that it sort of created the found footage genre, which is very prevalent within horror. Max Brooks has a book that I read, I guess last year, called De-Evolution, and it's about the found footage or journal from people that endured a Sasquatch attack. And it's the same thing. It's like you're reading each page, you're like, okay, what's going to happen next? Because this is what they found, and so is this going to be the last entry? And there really is a certain amount of suspense with that approach to a story, where you really don't know what's going to happen. The next page might be, oh, well, there was nothing after this, and I'm the investigator that found this, and here's what we think happened. And so you're really wondering where does the story go? Because most of the time when you read a story, the hero is going to survive. That's why they're the hero of the story. But the found footage kind of breaks up that expectation a little bit. So is Mina a character in the original Dracula?
Oh, absolutely. She's Jonathan Harker's wife. She's the one who is his fiancée while he's trapped in Castle Dracula. He's just gone there to do some lawyer stuff because Dracula is trying to move to England to find some fresh blood. And she's one of the heroines. She's the only female member of the crew of Light, as our guest Jeffrey Ryder had mentioned. And she's the one about whom what is it? It's Dr. Seward and all the other folks who were just praising her to the skies. She's such a genius. She's so smart. She's got a man's brain. They're praising a woman in their very Victorian way. Right. Bless their hearts. But she's a legit heroine. But she also gets assaulted by Dracula, and toward the end there, spoiler alert, she's basically the main victim of the story. You don't know whether she's going to live or die. So that figures into this informal sequel. Sounds like. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what she did with that. Hey, speaking of creatures, I understand that there are some zombies and airships in the winner for the best young adult novel in the young adult category. And that was last year's Secrets in the Mist by Morgan Bussey, also from Enclave Escape. That's their YA imprint at that publisher. That one's got airships and flying and apparently a mist that turns people into zombies. I must admit I haven't read it, but we did do a review at Lorehaven, and we've also recently did an advanced review of the sequel. I think it's book 2 of 2, which is called Blood Secrets. That just came out. No, it's actually coming out in a few weeks if you're listening to this episode around release day. The Best Young Adult Realm Award 2022 for Secrets in the Mist. Yes, apparently the presence of zombies in that story was making a few people nervous, but I'm glad that they did it. I'm glad to see some frontiers being pushed there in a biblical way. Best middle grade novel, Sing to Me of Rain by E.B. Dawson, independently published book there. You know, Zach, we don't do as many middle grade titles here on Fantastical Truth, but I'm hoping we can. I think the last time we focused on a middle grade series was mainly because I was familiar with it. The Incredible Worlds of Wally McDougall, the series by Bill Myers, who was our guest in summer of 2020. But whether it's this book or others, like I think we maybe need to do some more of that stuff. Reach out to those parents who be part of our audience because Lorehaven's reaching out to Christian fans and not just authors.
Yeah, middle grade has been a tricky genre for us to find good books in for our kids.
Well, you were talking earlier about the Dead Sea Squirrels. That's also middle grade. Yeah.
You know, it's like they're tired of like the kids chapter books, but they're not quite ready for the YA books. It's bless the hearts of all middle grade authors because I that's got to be a tricky needle to thread.
Final award here, at least going through the book awards, is the Reader's Choice Award. They handle this one a little bit differently. There's professional judges who discern the best novels as best they can from these other categories, and then from there pick the book of the year. But this one goes out to the fans. So fans of Kara Swanson nominated Shadow more than fans of other folks, at least in this contest. So Shadow by Kara Swanson from Enclave Escape took home that award. We have had Kara on the show as well. Last year, I think it was, Zach, talking about both Dust and Shadow. Again, a duology. Enclave's been doing a lot of duologies there. So as I mentioned at the top of the show, there are some other awards that we just won't go over here. Best novella, best novelette, cover design, audiobooks in various categories, audio short stories, and short stories and flash fiction that appeared on websites or in print. So you can find every single one of those award winners in the link in our show notes. The news story at our website was called Realm Makers Announces Winners of 2022 Realm Awards for Best Christian Made Fantasy. And then from there, you can also go and look at all of the nominees. Each one of those book categories, for example, had 5 nominees in there. So you can cheer on your favorite, but also see who else got the nomination, which is also very prestigious recognition there. Lots of great fiction out there. We just don't have the time or space to go through every single title here. However, we do have time to go then to our comm station. Zach, while you and I were away, we got some really great notes from previous episodes of the podcast. Starting here with a note from Lucas Kitchen. I think I actually met you, Lucas, at the conference as well. He cooked up some encouragement about episode 121. Longer comment here. We'll just excerpt this a little bit. He said, quote, "I loved this episode. I listened to it on the flight back from Realm Makers. I've noticed that a lot of the Christian sci-fi and fantasy is only subtly Christian or maybe even not at all in content. That was my impression leaving Realm Makers as well. There was a lot of talk about writing for the mass market. I listened to your podcast and it raised my spirits. Seriously, it was right at the right time that I listened. I then found your multiple articles about what makes Christian spec fic Christian. I wished I had spent more time at the conference talking to you. I'm the guy that asked you what you and your co-host debate about and then sat and talked to you about UFOs and aliens in the cosmos." End quote. Zach, that's where I basically said, man, I wish Zach was here. Zach's my alien guy. He is my interface with the UFO community and all those wacko conspiracy folks and those wise conspiracy folks, because there are some of them out there. That's where I got to say, hey, I can't take credit for the alien shows or the Armies of the Alien series we do on the podcast. That is a Zack thing. By the way, Lucas, thank you for listening. Great to talk with you at the conference as well. And I shared your impression there, although I didn't go to the writers' classes. There's a lot of talk at any writers' conference about trying to go to the mainstream market, or the mass market, which may be a slightly different term there. I believe, as I've said on the podcast before, that Christian fiction basically is the same thing, properly defined, as Christian-made fiction. The Christian is the individual, and as a result, the book is Christian in some way, whether the content is subtle or overt, whether Jesus is named or whatever. The only exception is if an author has a major chip on their shoulder about the church or something and is deciding to subvert Christianity even while still trying to be a Christian. That puts the Christianity of the book in a state of flux. Doesn't mean it's not Christian or pagan or evil or anything like that. I would just say that the faith claim is in flux, and then hopefully that person will find their way back to Jesus, and then their book will be decidedly Christian. I think Christian-made fiction can be mainstream. It may be a special case increasingly in a mainstream world that disfavors Christianity, or it can be made for Christians, published with a Christian label. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I think increasingly that's a great approach. And it's frankly one that I'm hoping to take. I mean, Lorehaven is definitely by Christians for Christians. And whether you find your stories in the mainstream market or from Christian authors.
Yeah. Lucas, I would advise you to go back to, and thank you for listening to the podcast. And I'm glad it's encouraging you. And if you haven't listened yet, go back all the way to episode 2 of our podcast. That's where we talk about what do we mean by saying it's a Christian story? And, I give 4 definitions there. I'll just run through real quick, which is a Christian story could be something for a Christian audience. It's about Christian characters. It could be just about Christianity in general for those inside or friendly to the church. It could be like Christianity, like an allegory or metaphor for spiritually curious people, or it could be just simply a novel by a Christian, as Stephen said, that it's for a wide audience. It's not necessarily about Christianity, but the author is known to be a Christian. At least we hope so. And yes, where this can kind of go sideways, as Stephen said, is sometimes there are Christian authors who do have a chip on their shoulder. We talk about the church back home syndrome.
Or just some stuff they're working through. Yeah.
Yeah. And their book is, sometimes authors talk about writing a book as therapy. And, I just want to go on the record here and say, I get it. I understand why you want to write things to kind of work through your past. And maybe that past includes hurt in the church, but I'm not real supportive of the idea of writing a book as therapy and selling it to other people, because then they're paying you. When you go to therapy, you pay the therapist. If you're
That's
writing
true.
a book as
You're
therapy,
making an investment. Yeah.
You're asking the person to pay you for your therapy. And I think it's a little bit backwards, but I get it. I get that happens. And I also get that there are people that don't want to be outed as Christians. And I think that can be a problem as well. But I don't think it's a problem to write for a wide audience as long as you are truthful about who you are and what you believe. Where I have seen this, go sideways is where a Christian creator is not known to be a Christian and then is outed as a Christian to a predominantly secular fan base. And then they get upset that, oh, you believe this or you hold to this ideal, and then does that mean you voted this way?
Yeah. They can feel the betrayal. Wait a minute, I thought he was one of us, and now no, he's a sheep in wolf's clothing. What's going on?
Yeah. So I think, look, at whichever audience you're writing for, whichever kind of subset of readers you're going for, whichever way you are trying to interface your Christian faith with your story, I think always be clear about who you are. And be clear about who the book is for, but be clear about who you are. You not you, Lucas, but you, Christian author out there, so that yes, people don't feel hornswoggled. Great word, by the way.
You just need to use the word hornswoggle in more sentences. I think if you get anything out of this show, I think it's a great word. Like, it sounds slightly vulgar, but it's really not. And plus, you get to sound like a Warner Brothers cartoon character back when Warner Brothers was good. Another listener shared this reply. Oh, by the way, that episode was 121, and that's the one that you and I did together, Zach. Will humans colonize the cosmos before Jesus returns? After that, we had the solo show released a few days late, 122, Why Are More Fans Turning Against Their Favorite Franchises? But another listener had shared this reply about that episode. They said, quote, personally, I stopped keeping up with Star Wars and Marvel after Disney acquired them and started churning out multiple movies a year plus multiple TV/streamed series. Those franchises tie everything to everything else, and if you miss a single thing, suddenly the references and interactions in the next movie don't make sense or leave a sense of being excluded from an inside joke. Marvel especially is guilty of this. I don't have the time or energy to devote to every series and movie. Consequently, I lost interest in the franchises as a whole. End quote. That's not even an objection to woke stories or sexual identity versions of things going on. That's just fatigue. We actually talked about that, Zach, I think, with Megan Bashop in our episode about franchise fatigue. And some of that is just fans objecting to the thing, but some of it is just you're moving on to different stages of your life. You have kids, you can't get out to the movie theater once every month or so like you used to. There's just things that happen, your tastes change, and for me, like, I think my tastes have changed, even more away from a lot of the Marvel stuff. So even if they weren't trying to put a bunch of agenda stuff in there as they seem to be, like, I think I would just be getting tired. But does that mean I wouldn't be interested in watching like the Daredevil TV show? Actually, I probably would be, and if I had Disney Plus, I'd probably put that on my list, because I to a large extent I really like the Netflix show, and a slightly less grimdark version of that might just be right up my dark Hell's Kitchen alley. So you don't need to throw it all out, but I definitely understand that sense of fatigue, especially after Comic-Con, which I recorded the show before Comic-Con got started, and Marvel like dropped all the movie titles they supposedly planned between now and the year 2026. Like,
Yeah.
okay, we're done with phase 4. Now we're moving to phases 5 and 6. So here's everything. And just looking at that giant chart, to me, it's exhausting. And
Yeah.
so I definitely share our listeners' sentiment here. And like I mentioned, like feeling just like what DC did was lame. And like Zach, I think I watched the trailer for the Shazam sequel, but I've not seen any of the other trailers, because like, why should I feel like it's homework? I'm graduated from school. Like, don't make what's supposed to be fun into homework. I really don't want to do that.
Wait, Sinbad's going to be in another one?
What's that? Sinbad?
And Shazam sequel.
Oh no! Oh, here we go. This old canard again. Yeah, no. No. It's a multiverse, right?
Yes,
it's
there we go.
it's the Berenstain effect, the Mandela effect,
the
or whatever.
Mandela effect.
Yeah. That's Zach with his Gen Z humor, or is it old Xennial humor? I don't know. But yeah,
I don't know.
Old joke. Google it. We're not putting it in the show notes. Google it.
I definitely hear what this listener is saying, which I would call fandom gluttony. It's just, it's too much of a good thing makes it a bad thing.
Yeah, too many carbs.
Yeah, I try, even with shows that I'm watching, I try not to binge them now. I've had COVID this week. I've been in bed almost all day. So look, I'm gonna admit I had binged a few shows.
Yes, St. Peter will allow it at the pearly gates. Yeah, it's okay to binge if you have COVID, right? But still.
But most of the time, I like to just watch an episode a day of a show, and I liked it. The waiting is what makes it interesting, and I actually like that with The Mandalorian and other Disney shows, how they would just do one episode a week now. You could take a cynical interpretation of that, but I thought that was fun. I thought the anticipation was fun.
Yeah.
Talking to friends, like, I had a group text with a couple Star Wars nerd friends, and every week it's like, have you watched it yet? Can we talk about it? And like, that was always really fun. But what this listener said about feeling like you have to keep up to know all the inside jokes, and you're just like losing track of everything, like, it is kind of exhausting. And it's interesting to hear. There's a lot of people complaining about this, not just Christians, not just conservatives or whatever. There's a lot of people saying this, that like they are just trying to milk this thing for all it's worth, and it's just not. I don't think it's going to work in the long run. I don't think man can. What does the Bible say? The eyes are never tired of seeing, but sometimes they are.
Yeah.
Like, sometimes you get too tired of watching or having to watch. It's the pressure of like, have you seen it yet? Have you watched this newest thing? And there's only so much of that you can do.
Well, I think the idea now is that, okay, we need to make sure that we don't repeat the running into the ground of the Western genre or war movies or other trend movies that swept through Hollywood and popular culture. So what are we going to do to keep this fresh? Okay, well, we will try branching out into other genres as well. We'll do a spy thriller. We'll do a political thriller. We'll do fantasy. Let's bring in Doctor Strange to cast some spells. We'll do, this kind of mytho-poetic attempt with the Eternals or whatever that was supposed to be. And I think like some of that, though, you risk doing too much new strange stuff, but your brand was built on this is all one story. Generally all the films are in one genre, superhero fantasy,
Action comedy.
action comedy. Well, and then there's a lot of them, especially the Thor movie, like just action comedy. That's all that it was. And I was interested in seeing the Thor, not Dark World, the Thor Love and Thunder for that reason. Like I just,
Right.
it felt like a sugar rush from a movie I'd not even consumed, and like I don't need a movie that's violating the laws of digestion that makes me feel a sugar high that I'm gonna crash from when I haven't even seen the movie or consumed the sugar. Like that's not an effect that's for me. But and maybe you want to say something about that episode as this listener did, or about any of the Realmmakers coverage that we did. Did you talk to us at the booth? Did you miss seeing Zack? Email us podcast@lorehaven.com or find us on the socials. Just look for Lorehaven on the old Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. And of course, we have a comment box at the site. You'll want to definitely sign up for free updates from Lorehaven as well. Oh, speaking of which, meanwhile at Lorehaven, definitely subscribe and get that access code so you can portal as if by magic into the Lorehaven Guild, our server on Discord, available exclusively to free Lorehaven subscribers. We just wrapped our last book quest for July for George MacDonald's classic Fantastes, and now we're jumping into a newer story. Elijah David is doing that new book quest through the month of August. It's our most august book quest for 100 Cupboards. Hey, speaking of middle grade, Zach, it's a middle grade-ish book there from N.D. Wilson. Really great portal fantasy there. Several portals, in fact, behind the bedroom wall that young Henry gets to discover. And then, of course, he also discovers that when you start jumping in and out of worlds, you also find some darkness going on there. So really great Christian-themed story, I think, by the way, that was in a mainstream publisher there for quite a while at least. So we're going to be exploring that through the month of August in the Lorehaven Guild. Also, we have the Elijah David article coming up about the horse and his boy. Several months back, Elijah started going through each of the Chronicles of Narnia and just fleshing out what each story meant to him as a Christian and as a reader. He's going to be exploring the horse and his boy and how that illustrated to him the sovereignty of God. Got an advanced look of that article. Haven't edited it yet, but we should have that up by Thursday after this episode's release date. Just go to lorehaven.com and find it there. And you can also get that notification about the article by subscribing free to Lorehaven. You don't just get the guild code, you also can choose your own updates, get notified whenever we put out a new podcast or review or news post or book quest or article like Elijah David's article. And we got some new, really exciting articles coming up here too, just in time for back to school season that we've been working on among the creative team.
And I would like to know from you, our listener, what was on your summer road trip playlist in the car? What were your podcasts or audiobooks or just, new music albums that you were listening to? So send us a note at podcast@lorehaven.com.
Next on Fantastical Truth. Well, at each Realm Makers conference and beyond, you will find Christian authors trying to do the thing we mentioned earlier, a thing that has evaded all but the most elite spies and celebrities in our culture, crossing over from the Christian market, as they call it, to the general market. Well, that's the goal anyway, not just for many Christian creators of fantastical fiction, but also anybody who's a Christian musician or artist or some kind of influencer. But should these stories, if they cross over, try to evangelize the secular readers in some way? And if so, what is the best way to do this? Not just according to the results, the numbers, but according to the Bible. Very interesting topic. I'm looking forward to exploring that in our next episode. Meanwhile, whether or not you attended Realmmakers in person or virtually, know that you are a part of this fan community. There are some amazing fans out there, Christians and some non-Christians, by the way. A lot of these stories do have the potential to cross over, and it is our joy to explore them with reviews, meeting the authors, and showing up at as many of these events as we can to represent Lorehaven and the Fantastical Truth podcast as we continue to seek and find Christ's fantastical truth.